Are you looking for an internet talk radio station for your podcast? Look no further. At the helm of Passionate World Talk Radio are two women that want to provide a spot for you and your podcast to be heard. There are many other places for your podcast, but PWTR has the audience. You will not be disappointed. Our station has been on the internet for the past 16 years. Call us for more information. 484-364-1032 or text Jeannie White, station manager at THECONNECTSHOW@gmail.com for podcast show details. Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host or the station. Folks, you're going to want to listen to my guest today. I am so excited to have on a young man with a beautiful future ahead of him. And when he becomes famous, I'm going to say I interviewed him on Chatting with Betsy. My guest is Wade Simmon. He is from Chicago. He's a Chicago-based filmmaker. He likes to produce and write films. And he's a funeral service worker. And he's training to be a pro wrestler. And who knows, you could be the next Rock. And that would be awesome. So I want to welcome Wade Simmons to Chatting with Betsy.
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Wade. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. You know, just sitting back, enjoying the day. That's all, just relaxing.
How's your weather out there in Chicago?
It's kind of inconsistent. Like the other day, it was pretty nice, and then today it's pretty cold.
Yeah, that's same here in New Jersey. It was chilly yesterday. Yeah, sunny today. Going to be rainy this weekend. I'm so excited to have you on because you are a young man with such a bright future, and you were so active in so many things. So can you tell us, the audience, you're a funeral service worker, so right there, I got to discuss that right there. What is that like to be a funeral service worker, and especially during COVID? That had to be quite interesting.
So it is one of those jobs that will teach you not to take life for granted.
That's true.
I've been doing it for 11 years. I started in high school, but I mean, pretty typically, you know, it's one of those jobs where, like, I put it like this. You know, you don't take. It will teach you, like, not to take any moments or anything in life for granted. But during COVID, it was really like. I mean, to be honest with you, it was kind of quite frightening because at first, you know, we didn't really know that much about it. I mean, the funeral homes, like almost all of them were overwhelmed. I mean, I know the one that I worked at, you know, it was just a lot of stuff going on. You know, a lot of, you know, families had to keep coming back because a lot of people just kept dying from COVID.
Yes, it was a tough time. I talked to a funeral director. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
I talked to a funeral director who did my husband's funeral and my brother's, and he said that they couldn't keep up with the bodies, and they were like had to wear almost like space suits to protect themselves from the people who died.
Yeah, it was because I know, like, during COVID, I actually went to a funeral director conference in Texas, and it was I think it was like in Gaylord, Texas, or somewhere like that. We were at it was Grapevine, Texas, or something like that. But we were at a nice resort, and we had attended a convention, and one of the things that came up was like, you know, what was going on with all the, you know, funeral service workers from other states came together and just kind of discussed what was happening. And I know, like, I think it was, I don't know if it was in Virginia or one of the states where, like, there were no funeral services allowed. Like, you know, it was either like direct burial or direct cremation, so people couldn't even get to say goodbye to their loved ones. I know, speaking from a Chicago standpoint, it was pretty bad because at first, like, you know, you can only have 10 family members in at a time, which was pretty problematic because, you know, most people know more than 10 people, you know. And so just trying to, you know, tell people that you can only have 10 at a time, like, that was like a nightmare.
Yes, and or even to have it, like, postpone it for 6 months to a year afterwards. It is horrible. I know my own personal experience. I'm very thankful my husband died before COVID. I really am so thankful for that. My brother, he didn't die from COVID, but it was during COVID that he died. And my brother was very well known in our hometown. I didn't know how well known he was. We had graveside services, but it would have been packed. But people didn't come because of COVID. And, you know, people didn't come and visit my mom as much as they probably would have because of COVID. And we couldn't see my brother, my mom, and my younger brother couldn't see Bradley until he was literally ready to die, until they took the ventilator off. And what bothered me, Wade, and I'm sure it bothers many, many people out there, is I was thinking, what was my brother thinking that nobody from the family was there for him? That really bothered me.
Yeah, I know that had to really be rough too, you know, because again, like, we didn't really know that much about it. I mean, you know, I can't speak for the scientists or the doctors, but I know from being a funeral service worker, I mean, we know some medical terminology, but, you know, that's not really our expertise. But I mean, you know, we didn't really know how to really handle it either because it was something that we never really, you know, the coronavirus alone was nothing new. But I mean, the strands that we were getting introduced to, I mean, we didn't know how contagious it was. So I know, like, some embalmers, some of them, some funeral homes didn't even embalm bodies. It was just direct cremation or direct burial, because they didn't want to risk, you know, their health, you know.
Right. And I think I asked the funeral director, you know, when someone dies who has COVID, how do they know? Is the virus still, I mean, I know the person is dead, but is the virus still alive? Can you still get infected?
Now that's a really good question, because, like, that question, I mean, I still never got a definite answer to, because, like I said, when I went to school for funeral service, when we were, you know, in the embalming class and going through, like, microbiology and pathology, you know, they were teaching us things like, there's this one special case where even after death, you cannot embalm the body, and that's like if somebody has Ebola, or if there's some type of extreme radiation. I mean, I don't care how good of a funeral director anybody is. By law, you are not supposed to embalm anybody with Ebola or any extreme radiation. So with the coronavirus, I mean, with the strand that was out, we didn't know that much about it. So, you know, a lot of people were not sure if it was along those lines. So a lot of them just didn't take the risk, you know.
Yeah, that's I wondered that. I know my father-in-law, he had liver disease. So he was mustard yellow, and the funeral director said we can't embalm him because of the what he died of, that he would look green in a casket. So he had a closed casket. You know, and then you have family members muttering, why is the casket closed? Well, no, and then you have to explain why, which is really none of their business. But you know, family members, they start talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, a good funeral director, is doing their job right when they explain everything to a family, you know, when they're being honest.
Yes.
Because the worst thing you can ever do is tell a family, oh, I'll do a good job. And then the family gets there, and then it looks very unacceptable, you know, and that's the last thing that anybody would want, you know.
Right.
So it's better to be upfront and honest with people.
Yes, yes. You know, I have to ask you, since you work in the funeral service, I don't know if anyone asked you this before, but I'll ask it. What should someone look for in picking out a funeral director, funeral home?
Well, I would say that, you know, if services are needed, the first thing that I would say that the family should look at is probably where do we plan on having it? How many people do we plan on having? And kind of go from there. And then too, like, you know, because I don't really like to say pricing, because to some people, pricing is a issue, and then to some people, you know, the pricing is not an issue. So I think what a family should do is when they go into a funeral home, they should first of all think about like what size or type of service that they would like. If they're going to meet with a funeral director, they should, you know, kind of see if the funeral director kind of clicks with the family, you know, because I think that not everybody clicks well with families, you know. I mean, even in doing that profession, like, you know, you can meet with a family, but maybe it may be something about the funeral director that the family, you know, maybe don't feel as welcome with, you know, or when they go into a funeral home, you know, they don't feel that they really don't feel good being in that environment. I feel like a family, when they come into a funeral home, you know, they have to do what's best for them, you know, and then they should look at what type of person was their loved one. I mean, were they a very quiet person? Were they a loud person? Were they comical? Were they serious? I mean, because all those little details matter, you know?
Yes. And I always encourage people, I've done many shows on my talk show about preparing and pre-planning your funeral service, memorial, however you, whatever the person chooses, because, you know, we plan everything else, but people don't want to plan their end of life. And it's so important to have this done ahead of time. And I'm sure you've seen cases where families are going, you know, they're distraught, and then they have to deal with, you know, planning a funeral. I mean, sometimes it's sudden. You don't know. And sometimes you do know because the person has an illness. Would you recommend pre-planning, since you are in this service? You were in the funeral business. Would you recommend that to families?
I would say absolutely. I mean, it never hurts. It never hurts to have an insurance policy. I mean, even if a family decides not to use it, I mean, I think it's better to, you know, to have it and not need it, you know, than it is to need it and don't have it, you know, because again, I mean, it is expensive, but I mean, I mean, not everybody wants a traditional funeral, but I mean, even cremation still costs. Yeah. You know, so I mean, whatever a person wants, I mean, it never hurts to be prepared, because if the family, you know, chooses not to use money for services, maybe if something happened, at least they don't have to worry about their family struggling for money, because they have something in place to kind of, you know, keep the family going, you know.
Right. I think I know it's very important. I just interviewed someone the other day about pre-planning, and I know from my own experience, I pre-planned my husband's funeral, and, you know, it was one of the most difficult things that I had to do. I went to the cemetery. Yeah. We already had a plot, you know, to do the opening and closing cost, work out a plan, and then go to the funeral home, pick out his casket, and start paying on that. And that was very, very difficult. But I did it, and I'm glad I did, because it just so happened that, you know, my husband died January 1st, 2020, So his cemetery was paid for, but the funeral was not, because I couldn't write out the checks for him. I couldn't do it. I said, I'll take it out from the life insurance. Now, I pre-planned my own funeral. I have no problem writing out a check for me.
Yeah.
For my service, but it's nothing, and I tell the audience, it's nothing to feel guilty about. You should not feel guilty. It's something that, we all should do. And I want to, and then did you ever see any fights at the funeral home?
All the time. I mean, unfortunately to say that, but yeah, and a lot of times it's over what we're talking about, insurance policies.
Well,
because
I've heard. Go ahead.
Yeah, because maybe you have like a guy, let's say for instance, he's maybe like 75 years old, and then maybe he has children that's maybe like in their 50s or 60s. And maybe he has 6 or 7 children, and one of the children, the father has a nice insurance policy, but out of the 6 or 7 children, maybe 2 of them had the dominant control, and then the other ones are like, well, wait a minute, what about me? That was my father too. I mean, so I should get a piece of it too. And sometimes, unfortunately, in families, it doesn't work that way, and sometimes that creates a big problem among siblings,
Yes. Yes, that's very important. I say this all the time, folks, and I don't care if I sound redundant. You need to pre-plan, because what happens is somebody will say, oh, Mom or Dad wanted to be cremated. No, they wanted a traditional burial. So do yourselves a favor. Do your family a favor. Pre-plan it. Have your wishes done, go to a lawyer, get it legalized, and save your family stress, okay? That's what I could highly recommend that.
Absolutely.
You're a filmmaker, so tell us about what kind of films do you make, and where can people watch them?
So me, I'm an independent filmmaker. I make like little short family friendly films. Some of them are romantic, some of them are just family friendly. But I always refer to myself as a Hallmark style filmmaker, which means that most of my films are just fluffy, surface. They're not anything like political or anything like way out or any like agenda driven. Like I just make stuff to have fun. I make it to, kind of get people's mind off the stuff that goes on in the world and stuff. Because, I mean, I'm also a minister, too. But, every now and then, you just want to sit back and just watch something that your mind is just kind of neutral. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Yeah, take your mind off your troubles.
It's like it's not bombarded with all the other stuff that's going on in the world. It's just something you can just sit back and laugh at and not take serious. But they can find me on Vimeo. My Vimeo channel is called Wade Filmmaker, 3 sevens. I chose the number 7 because that's a very significant biblical number. Yes.
Yes, it is perfect. Perfection.
Yeah.
Right, the number 7. That is interesting. And who are your favorite filmmakers?
So my favorite filmmaker of all time, I tell everybody, it's George Lucas. I'm a very big George Lucas fan, the creator of Star Wars. And the reason why I'm a very big George Lucas fan is because, to me, I kind of relate to his story as far as, like, going to film school. And kind of like, it wasn't so much necessarily, like, even though, like, filmmaking has always been my passion. I mean, I was making films as a kid. I mean, I was, video and family events. I was always writing. I always knew that I wanted to do it. But, I didn't really, I guess, see myself, like, maybe doing it, like, as a career. I mean, I just kind of did it, like, as a hobby. But what happened was that when I went to school to be a funeral director, after I finished the program, there's every state is different. So like New Jersey, Virginia, Washington, California, Texas, all of those states have different requirements. Even though you have to go to school, all of them have different requirements to being licensed. So in Illinois, we have the requirements that you have to embalm and be a funeral director. Now, my expertise is more on the funeral directing side. I mean, I can embalm, but you know how they go with taking tests and all that stuff. I mean, that's a whole nother subject. But anyway, I was able to pass the funeral director side, but because I kind of struggled with the embalming side, I was yet to be licensed. So I'm like, well, maybe I should go back to school. So then I was looking into plumbing because my family, my grandfather actually was a master plumber, and, you know, he taught my uncles the trade, and now my uncle has a business in Vegas. So what I did was before I decided what I was going to do, I went down to Las Vegas, and I stayed down there for a little while. I worked with my uncle, you know, to do plumbing, and I'm like, well, you know, even though my grandfather was a plumber, this is not something that I'm really into, and if I'm going to go back to school, why don't it be something that I really care about? So then I went to another college, and I was looking into dealing with working with animals, like being a veterinarian assistant. And I went in there and I saw like some of the animals were like injured and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh man, you know, I don't think I want to work with suffering animals. So then I'm like, okay, what is it that I want to do? And so I watched a TED Talk. And there was a lady, I don't really remember her name, but I remember what she said. She made a statement. She said, you know, in life, there is no final draft. She said kind of like, in other words, she said basically like, you know, kind of rewrite your own story. So I thought about it and I said, wait a minute, I like filmmaking. So I prayed about it and I'm like, okay, you know, God, I love filmmaking. What if I'm going to go back to school, why don't I go to school for something that I enjoy? So I went for filmmaking, and by the time I got in school, I ended up producing 14 shorts while I was in school, and then I graduated.
Well, you are a man of many talents. You to do, you know, funeral service and filmmaking. I think of Steven Spielberg, you know, because you said you were filming when you were young, and how he would be experimenting in his mom's kitchen, making explosions and filming. And I mean, look how famous he became. And it's true. Yeah. You know, I feel, Wade, that we have to do what feeds our soul. We have to do our passion.
Yeah, I believe you on that, because and the reason why I'm saying that, because just recently I ended up getting diagnosed with a condition. Thank God it's not life-threatening, but I ended up developing a condition called spasmodic dysphonia. A lot of people don't even know what that is, but what it is that my voice can become inconsistent. Like 1 minute I'm talking normal when I'm happy, and when I get stressed, my voice strains real bad. And I was meeting with a doctor, and you know, I go to like 2 different doctors or whatever, but me and the doctor was talking or whatever, and the doctor told me straight up, she was like, look, Wade, you're a filmmaker, you got other stuff going on, and she kind of knows my situation about me testing to be a funeral director. She's like, you know what, why don't you just pursue film full time and maybe work on some of your other passions, because the condition that you have, it's no cure for it. It's not life-threatening, but, you know, it's no cure for it. And basically what she was trying to tell me was that, you know, maybe you just kind of need to move on and maybe, you know, kind of be in a more happier environment, you know, because I didn't realize that stress really could cause people to get sick, you know.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're right. So I feel like, you know, things happen to us to kind of push us to maybe walk more into our destiny, you know. I really believe God uses those things sometimes to get us to reevaluate our life. Yes,
I definitely agree. If anyone would have told me 5 years ago I would be having a talk show, I would say you're crazy. You know, I would have said, no way. I mean, I'm very blessed and grateful for doing what I'm doing, and I found that it is a passion. It's a passion for me to help others. Providing resources to help people, giving people a chance to talk. I know what it's like to want to be heard and nobody giving you a chance to be heard. Go ahead.
And I feel like talking is really a good thing because, you never know what people are going through. I mean, it don't matter how much money somebody has or how many talents they have. Like, I feel like everybody, needs somebody to talk to. And sometimes everybody just needs somebody to kind of hear their story. Because like when we kind of look at the world now, like, I'm almost to the point now where I even hate to look at the news because all you see is like, people mistreating one another, and I mean, it's kind of sad, and you see more people just like I feel like sometimes maybe if more people were loving and, maybe more kind towards one another instead of us, passing judgment on each other, maybe we'd be more open to, learning more about each other. And, maybe that'll help people become more loving toward one another. I mean, it may not help everybody, but it'll help somebody.
Oh, I agree, Wade. Instead of people focusing on the differences between people, we're more alike than we are different. And I don't care what ethnic, background you are, your beliefs, cut your wrist. We all bleed red blood. We all are the same. So why can't we just treat each other with love and kindness like we're supposed to? Instead of judging someone, by their ethnic origin, their color, religion, whatever. It just drives me crazy how people can be so full of hate. I mean, I just don't get it. I really don't understand.
And the weird thing about that to me is like anybody that's religious, most religions, no matter if it's Islamic or Christian or anything, I mean, one principle that most religions deal is love for your fellow man. And so I just don't get it. Like, sometimes people have a different way of thinking, but I just believe that everybody should respect one another. I think that if people did that, I feel like we would have less problems with one another.
Yes, respect, and I find with more so now, people had a sense of entitlement. My time's better than yours, and me, and I wasn't raised that way. I grew up in the in the 60s, 70s. Came from my dad was out of work a couple of times. Things were tough. Things weren't handed to me. I had to work for everything. And I didn't have that sense of entitlement. And even though I have one son, I didn't give him that sense of entitlement either. And it's the way people raise their kids. I had to ask you, Wade, because I see you want to be going to pro wrestling. Now, do you want to be a pro wrestler or pro wrestler manager or both?
Yeah, well, so I'm training to wrestle too, but I know that I will make a much better manager.
That's interesting. Now, how did you get interested in that? I used to watch wrestling when I was younger.
Yeah, so the funny thing about that was I was on the wrestling team in high school. And part of the reason why I wrestled in high school was because I was a very big WWE fan. But of course, anybody that has did actual wrestling know that high school wrestling and the actual wrestling is much different from the professional wrestling. And so I went more. I kind of was sitting there thinking, like, I had started watching WWE again with I couldn't get it out, sorry, but I started watching WWE again with my little cousins. And are you familiar with Roman Reigns?
No, I'm more familiar with I haven't watched wrestling in a long time. The Rock, Road Dogg.
Okay. Yeah.
Triple H, Nick Foley.
Yeah. So Roman Reigns is actually The Rock's cousin.
Oh, wow.
And so right now he's doing a great job, like as a bad guy. So I was watching him, and I kind of was laughing like how the crowd was booing him and stuff, and how he was like, he's playing this villain role, him and Paul Heyman, and then I started thinking about it. You know what? I think I do want to, do something with professional wrestling. So what happened was that I thought about making a documentary about wrestling, and so I know that there's a wrestling program in Chicago, organization rather, CSW, and Steve Boz, he's a very well-known professional wrestler, respected. I reached out to him, and he was nice enough to respond, and I was kind of telling him about myself, and then he's like, Wade, why don't you come in and, let's think about maybe training you. And so I'm laughing like, you want to, like, I'm not an easy guy to train, trust me. I think they know that now. but yeah, I'm a super clumsy guy, but what I do appreciate is, like, he really does push me to get better, But like I told him, I want to be a manager, and I did learn that in pro wrestling, one thing that I love about it, it's a really I don't really like to say small community because I know that it's small kind of in a sense where almost everybody kind of knows each other. But to me, it's a very big community. But what I love about it is, like, everybody tries to work together to, give the fans what they want. But also, I like about it is that everybody's concerned about the safety, working with one another. So it's like, to me, a lot of the people are very friendly, and so they want to see you like succeed. So we all help each other out or whatever. Like I said, I'm straggling along a little bit, but eventually I'll get there.
Yeah, well, you're young yet, so you have plenty of time. I just thought it was interesting. I used to watch wrestling when I was young, when I was a child, and then I didn't, and then my son. And that's over 20 years. It is over 20 years ago. He was watching wrestling. He was watching, and The Rock came on, and I just cracked up laughing. So I started watching wrestling again because I like The Rock and Nick Foley, Triple H, or I think it was Jericho.
Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho was he's one of my favorites too.
Yeah,
my all-time favorite wrestler is Kane, but I gotta say that one thing that I love about Chris Jericho, I can tell that I've never met him, at least not yet. But one thing I like about him, it's just something about him that I can tell he loves what he does. Because people do things and they do it, but it doesn't mean that they really love it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But
true.
One thing I can say about him is, like, I can tell that he really has a love for the business. And he seems like a really nice guy. But Kane is my favorite wrestler of all time.
Oh, he's a big guy too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
he's really big. Big dude. I wouldn't want to fight with him.
Oh, but you know what? But when you get a chance, you should look up Kane's Hall of Fame speech. Because when I watched that Hall of Fame speech, I almost cried myself because, like, I like what he said because, when he gave his speech, he kind of talked about his background, but he didn't like talk about himself. He kind of talked about all the people that helped him, and then I kind of liked how he ended it, where he said, if somebody like me could do this, he said, imagine what you can do. And when he said that, it's like I kind of went nuts because, like, I was kind of really moved by that speech, and it kind of made me think about, what, that anybody that have ever did anything great in life, it's kind of like, I feel like when you do great things in life, it sometimes kind of comes from a lot of hardship, because a lot of people see the the glorious side of everything, but I feel like everybody that's done something great, you know, everybody has a story about how they got to where they were. And for some people, I mean, the story is not always as glorious as it looked because, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where, like, in order for you to be successful, you have to be willing to take risk. And sometimes, like, I call that risk faith. You know, I call it faith because I believe when the Bible says that faith is the substance of things hoped for and it's the evidence of things not seen. And so I look at it as like this, is like, you know, I know that we won't live here forever. Of course, the ultimate faith is that when we leave, we'll go be with the Lord. But, I mean, in this life, I feel like it's just you have to trust God. You know, and sometimes, like, I feel like, you know, I can't speak for everybody else because, I mean, not everybody's a believer, but for somebody like me, somebody like you, I really believe that God really directs people. And I believe that scripture that tells us that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. You know, I believe those scriptures that say in all thy ways acknowledge him and that he will direct our path, you know. And so I just look at it as faith.
Yes. And you know what, Wade? Things happen. You know, they say bad things happen to good people. People question, you know, why. And I heard a speaker say one time, I don't even remember the name of the speaker. He said, don't look at yourself. Look at the bigger picture. What is God trying to tell you? Maybe something happened to you to help someone else. And, you know, we don't see the whole picture. But if you believe in God, you're a believer, or whatever someone or whoever someone believes in, there's a plan for us. And they say if you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans, because your plans may not be what God has planned for you. And that's quite true in my life.
Wait, you know what? It's funny you say that. And the reason why I say that, you know, God kind of gave me like some insight all my life, right? Like if you look at it, right, I went to school to be a mortician. And one of the things that I learned from working in funeral service is that, you know, life is a gift. It's a gift that God has given us. Let's not take it for granted because time runs out at some point.
It's true.
And so that was the principle that I learned from funeral service. So then I went to school to be a filmmaker. And then in filmmaking, I learned that when you make a movie, this alludes to what you just said. You have to be intentional. And what I learned is that with filmmaking, you have a director, you have a producer. And I thought about it. I said, well, you know what? God is the best director that we'll ever have. Because like you said, I feel like when things happen, you know, God will lead you kind of like in the Bible, like where in the Old Testament, he led the prophets, and even in the New Testament, like, you know, how he led the disciples. And kind of like how it says that, you know, they that are led by the Spirit, they are the sons of God. You look at it, I feel like God directs his people. You know, like he orders our steps. Like he may say, you know, hey, Betsy, go this way. Maybe there's somebody that you're going to meet today that needs help, you know? So I feel like that's what God does in our life. It's like he directs our paths. And then I got into wrestling. And the one thing that I learned about professional wrestling that I never really thought about is that in wrestling, you have to be like very loose. You know, it's like you can't be stiff because, again, if you're too stiff, you will hurt yourself and you will hurt somebody else, you know. And I thought about it as far as like a spiritual side of that is like when God is trying to do something in your life, you can't be stiff. You have to be loose enough where he can work with you.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I tell caregivers, because I have a caregiving group, we have to be like water. We have to be able to bend and flow, because sometimes we make plans, but our loved ones aren't up to it, and we have to change plans. You're right, we can't be stiff. We have to be flexible and go with the flow of things. And, you're right. People see people that are, famous, but that fame came with a price. It came with people trying. People say, oh, I don't want to look like a failure. Well, you know what? Don't look at it as a failure. You tried, you learned from your mistakes, and you go on. There's so many people that were turned down. J.K. Rowling was turned down, like I think 33, 34 times about her books, the Harry Potter series. People get turned down. They told Walt Disney he wasn't creative enough. I mean, look, so you know what? And we get to rewrite our story. No matter what we were told in our youth, that's what someone else said about us. We get to write our own story, and it's a lot of work. I just feel that you have such a great potential, Wade, and great future. So where do you train to be? Where are you training now? You training in Chicago?
Yep.
Where you live?
Yep, I'm training in Chicago under a wrestler named Steve Boz.
I wish you the best, and I just have a feeling that you're going to do quite well. And when you become famous, remember me.
Oh, absolutely. Matter of fact, God willing, I'd like to come down there and get to meet you. That would be a blessing.
Oh, that would be great. If you ever wrestle in Madison Square Garden, about 45 minutes to an hour away from Manhattan, where the Garden would. I just get these, intuitions about people. I told you before I started to record, I've had people on my show that, starting to sell their books, and they became bestsellers. Not necessarily because they were on my show, but they got out there. They became bestsellers, and, you never know, Wade, who you meet, who knows who's watching, don't know how far your ripples go. You just don't know who's connected to who. You really don't. And
Oh, no, you go ahead, Betsy. I'm sorry. I'm just excited. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. I'm excited, too. And I think that we don't meet people by coincidence. It's meant for us to meet people. And it was meant for us to meet over the phone via Facebook. But, we met, and I feel a really strong connection to you. And I'm really so happy to have talked to you. You sound like a very sweet, nice young man, and I'm proud to have you on.
Yeah, well, I'm thankful that you had me, but you said something that just made me think. Do you know the actress Awkwafina? Well, I know that's not her real name, but that's her artist. But I was listening to one of her off-camera interviews. And she talked about how she had this job, and she was working this job, and she was like just making videos and posting it, and she didn't think nothing of it. And what happened was somebody at her job told her, like, look, don't really post these videos or whatever like that. So to make a long story short, she decided to let the job go. And she ended up posting this video, and then the video ended up kind of like going viral, and then her career just kind of took off from there. So I mean, again, I just feel like, you just have to follow the path that God puts before you, because other people may not understand it, or it doesn't make sense to them, but it's not for it to make sense to them,
Right. That's right. Each person's journey is their own, and we don't have to, understand it. I consider myself, and I say this all the time, and I think I'll always say it, I'm very blessed, very grateful. I told my husband a year before I met Jeannie White, who's the station manager at Passion World Talk Radio, I said, Matt, some way, somehow, I'm going to tell your story to the world. And, of course, he said, don't talk about me. And I always hoped somebody would see one of my videos. I used to go into my car to do videos to raise awareness on early onset Alzheimer's and about caregivers. And Jeannie White saw my video and contacted me, and I did an interview, and she asked me to speak on her show. And then I was given my own show. Never did I think that would happen. And I said, wow, you don't know. This is what God had planned for me, and God used my husband, Matt, because it was because of Matt I went into my car. I had to use my anger. I had to change my anger into a positive energy and not let it get to me, not let it destroy me. And you just don't know. You just don't know who's watching. And I just so happy to have you on, Wade. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience? Where can they reach you, Wade?
So you can reach me on Facebook. I'm not hard to find, Wade Simmon. And then I'm on Instagram, Wade Jedi 99. I'm a big Star Wars fan. And I'm a chatterbox, so feel free to message me, and then you can find me on Vimeo, Wade Filmmaker 77737 on Vimeo. So I'm not hard to find at all.
Oh, well, thank you. I wish you the best, and keep in touch. I'd like to have you come back and see what's going on in your career.
Yeah, I think God willing, things are about to take off a lot sooner than I think too. For some reason I just get that feeling that it's about to. But I really appreciate you for having me, and I appreciate you for believing in me. Because to me that means a lot more than you think.
You're welcome. You know what, Wade? I tell you what I've learned. Okay, I'm 64 years old, and I learned this in my 60s, so you're young yet. Sometimes all we need is for someone to see something in us that we don't see in ourselves, and to take a person underneath their wing and mentor them. And that is what Jeannie White, the station manager, did for me, and Lillian Caldwell, who's CEO. And I will always say that because it's true. I didn't see myself as a talk show host. I have no journalism experience. I didn't go to college for this. But they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And that's all someone needs is a chance and someone believing in them. But you have to believe in yourself that you have the confidence that you can do it. It's not easy, but it's necessary to have the confidence in yourself that you are good enough, that you are enough, and that God will use you. And I believe that God's going to use you. I really do.
Well, you keep up the great work, Betsy. I'm proud of you, too, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're welcome, and best wishes to you, and we'll keep in touch. Thank you, Wade Simmons, for coming on. Folks, what a beautiful story. I mean, it just touches my heart. Wade, you touched my heart today and filled my heart with joy. Folks, if you want to be a guest on my show, you have a story to tell, then email me at Sloan, S-L-O-A-N, Betsy31 @gmail.com. Sloan is my married name. And you can come on Chatting with Betsy. If you have a story to tell, a story to inspire others, to help others, just send me a note. And we'll see what we can work out. And thank you for listening, my audience. Please share this podcast. Please tell people about Chatting with Betsy to help others. Chatting with Betsy is not about me. It's about helping you, the audience, by giving you resources, helping you by hearing inspiring people. So please tell your friends about Chatting with Betsy and subscribe. It is free wherever you hear your favorite podcast outlet. And it's free to subscribe, and I have a phenomenal guest on. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, who's CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible. And I want to thank Jeannie White, who produces the show and writes the blog. Please read the blog because it will have information and how you can watch Wade Simmons' his films and how you can get in touch with him and follow him and see how he's doing. And I really feel that Wade Simmons has a bright future and a very nice, I say young man because I'm also about to be his mom, and I see a bright future ahead. And I just love to help people. This is my passion. So what you hear from me, this is me, being me. This is how I am. And I just want to thank you all for listening. And in a world where you could be anything, please be kind and shine your light bright. Even if people don't like it, shine it bright. Be you. Be your authentic self. And that's what I have to say. So this is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Bye-bye now.
Are you looking for an internet talk radio station for your podcast? Look no further. At the helm of Passionate World Talk Radio are two women that want to provide a spot for you and your podcast to be heard. There are many other places for your podcast, but PWTR has the audience. You will not be disappointed. Our station has been on the internet for the past 16 years. Call us for more information. 484-364-1032 or text Jeannie White, station manager at THECONNECTSHOW@gmail.com for podcast show details. Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the internet.